with the rumors that the Dresden Files could be headed back to TV with a new reimagined TV adaptation. I thought this would be a fantastic series to do on the channel where I go through a 6-season plan for how I would adapt all of the stories from the Dresden File books into TV. And today we are looking at my ideas for season 2.
The Belated Binge Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Belated Binge. I'm Zach, former radio host and lifelong sports fan who is discovering the magic of urban fantasy. Today, spoiler warning for all things Dresden Files through Battleground. Please subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. And just a fun little side fact for you. This is my second time trying to make this video because last time I did this silly microphone that I'm talking into right now was set on mute. So take 2, we're going to try this again. But reminder of my last video where I was talking about the possibility for a new Dresden Files TV show. The news and rumors that we got where Jim Butcher talked about how he has been in talks about readapting Dresden to TV. And he's not sure that it's going to happen with certainty, but they've at least done things like, ask him for his tax information, which is kind of important when it comes to that sort of thing, and tells you that it's fairly serious. So the rumor is, and the way that Butcher's quoted was that the TV show is going to follow the multi-book story that is about the Red Court of Vampires, that war, and Harry's interactions with Susan and her role throughout that. So what I thought would be fun for this channel, for this podcast, was to come up with my vision for how I would take that concept and take it beyond the Red Court of Vampires and adapt the entirety of the Dresden Files universe for this TV series. And basically the rule that I had is that the first season had to be that Red Court season because that's what they're talking about making. So that's the foundation that we're building this upon. I've got 10 episodes per season to do this in. And the way that I envision doing it is because of that, foundational layer that they've already put in place, based on the rumors of needing it to be, needing that Red Court story to be the first season for this. I have come up with a way to take other multi-book plot lines and turn them into their own season of this TV series. And I've got a total of 6 of them. Season 1, as I mentioned already, was the Red Court story. Today, we're going to dive into my ideas for season 2, and that is going to be the Knights of the Cross and the Denarians. I think that this is the right season 2 story arc to follow because of Harry's relationship with Michael, with his family, with Molly. With that being so important to the entirety of the series, I feel like you have to set that up as early as you possibly can. So the fans of the show that watched season 1 will have already met Michael in that, so that will help. But I think that you've probably to this point kept Molly out of the mix. I know that she was technically there in changes, but I just don't know how you use that season 1 to adequately tell Molly's story up until that point and how she became magical, how she became, Harry's apprentice. Like, I don't think you could have done that in a valuable way while focusing on the war against the Red Court. So I think you maybe just don't have her a big part of that, but like Michael can be a part of it. Murph can obviously be a part of things. You can do it. And I'm on the fence about Thomas also, to be honest with you. In my, adaptation here, he probably wasn't in it. That way you can have a more dedicated focus on the White Court at some point in time and not confuse people, because you can't take, in my opinion, if you're going to do these and focus on one multi-book plot line, then you can't take too many elements, like supernatural elements, and introduce them into that and make everything make sense and still stay cohesive and not confuse people, right? Like Jim Butcher is layered in the supernatural world that he built for Dresden. There's three different kind of vampires. There's three different kind of werewolves. You've got the Denarians, you've got the Knights of the Cross, you've got the Fae and all that that represents. You've got the Outsiders, you've got the White Council. Like you have so many entities and so many factions, so many different things, and then layers within those. You've got, you know, semi-gods, you've got titans, you've got the ghouls and everything else. Ghosts are a thing. It's just too much, I think, to be able to make all of that make sense. If you have your, you know, the core of your story focusing on like one faction, right? So I think there's ways that you could do it with like fun narration, as I mentioned in the previous episode, like having Harry, you know, maybe having his character break the fourth wall in a funny way like Deadpool did, or just have him like voiceover narrating throughout the season where you need to add a little bit of context to something when, you know, a character that you should be familiar with shows up, but like you haven't really gotten their intro yet. Maybe he gives you a little context like, oh yeah, that was such and such. You know, I'll tell you more about their story later. Can't wait to do that. But right now we've got to focus on this. You know, that sort of thing could really help. But I still think you want to keep it as easy to digest for a TV viewing audience as possible, because at the end of the day, that's who this thing is going to be for if you're putting it on television. And hopefully, the fans of the books will see the parallels and will understand why you've had to take a few liberties. And in this season, we're going to have to take a few liberties with the story to make it adapt well to TV. But I think that I've come up with a way to do it and keep it still rooted very firmly in the story that actually took place in the books and not piss off too many diehard Dresden fans with crazy adaptations. I promise there's no shoelace here. The burrow's not getting burned down. And yes, those are for my Harry Potter fans. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, so as we lean into this, another thing that I feel like I have to say kind of in the beginning is that I don't want to cause more confusion with the TV audience, as I mentioned a second ago, like by having something like Susan dies at the end of season one. So she can't come back in season two. This isn't Fast and Furious, right? Like when a character dies, they're gone. We can't have it. You can't tell these season by season stories completely linear because you have to jump around the timeline so much in the books to actually have these stories work. But you also can't just completely confuse your TV viewing audience. So for this season, since Susan is gone and there's a portion of this story that Susan was a part of, I think we can pretty easily just take her out and put Murphy into her place. And I think that'll be a clean enough replacement that it doesn't like screw up the integrity of the story, but it also doesn't leave us trying to explain how somebody just came back from the dead. So, the three major books that the Denarian story follows, and again, this is through Battleground, so we don't have any more information than that. There could be more Denarian stuff 12 months and beyond, but that stuff hasn't existed yet. So we're just going to pretend that what we have in these 17 books, as if there's not enough material, is enough to make this season of TV work. So the three books are going to be Death Masks, Small Favor, and Skin Game. That's what's going to be pulled to get these 10 episodes for TV ready to go for you. And this is the way that I think that goes down. We've got, and now I'm paranoid. I keep looking at the mute button on this mic so I don't screw this whole video up for a second time. So I think we start obviously linearly back at the beginning of this part of the plot line with Death Masks, and I think that Harry gets the case to find the shroud in this episode. And I think that the only thing that you have to do is, because you would have had the Duke Ortega stuff in season 1 already, and you would have omitted the shroud from that. I don't think you can then just go right back to that same like TV interview where Duke Ortega was to introduce the shroud when it wasn't there last time. Like, I don't think you can. That doesn't make sense. Maybe the way you do it is like Harry's been on the TV show, the Fowler show twice. So the first time was when Duke Ortega was there, and the second time is, when the stuff with the shroud and the Denarians happens. Maybe it's as simple as that. So he starts there on the show, and we're coming out. We've got the assassins in the parking lot. He's got to get the gosh, what was the name of I forget the name of the priest. Well, the priest imposter. I forget the name, but he's got to get him out of there and alive and get to the case for the shroud. That all happens in episode 1, and it ends when he's attacked in the alley by that Denarian, and you've got the Knights of the Cross. They get their introduction and defeat that Denarian there in the alley. You explain the coins in that way. You get to intro Shiro, you get to meet Sonya, and you get to reintroduce Michael, I guess you could say, or like make Michael have his grand entrance, because he'll be the one that people recognize from season 1. But now we're going to have a lot more Michael in this season, and so he's going to be a core character, that's a big part of this particular story. And because of his involvement, I think this is also where you start to lay the groundwork, and you introduce Molly to the story and show her growing up a bit through this season, so that you can set up for later when she becomes a much bigger part of the main story arcs. We have a connection and an established like recognition of who Molly is to Michael and who Molly is to Harry. And we've kind of seen her as a kid grow up a bit. So I think this is a good season to do that in as well. And so that's basically the end of episode 1. Michael gets his like big appearance, and he gets to be a big deal of defeating that Denarian. They explain the coin. That's episode 1, leaving us with episode 2, where Harry ends up getting captured by Nicodemus, and he has to be saved by Shiro. In the books, it's Susan. In our TV show, it's going to be Murph. So, however you want to play with getting him into that mess, I think you can either just plug and play Murphy into Susan's role from the book plot, or you can, streamline things and come up with a fun for TV way for Harry to get, taken. Obviously, he's going to have to be very chivalrous for Murphy to get away. And so it's Murphy and Shiro that come to save Harry, who's able to get away from Nicodemus and his daughter and his tongueless minions. But Shiro obviously sacrifices himself and replaces Harry in that, so that you're left on kind of that cliffhanger of what's going to happen to Shiro as Harry and Murph have to get out of there, because they're also, like, to the letter of the law, as soon as he kind of steps out of the doorway, they're coming after him, right? And so he's getting away. Shiro has to, we have to wonder about Shiro, and that's how we end episode 2. So that in episode 3, I think we kick it off with Harry and Michael, trying to track down Shiro. They track him to the airport, but you've got the plague, and you've got Shiro dead. But he gets to give his last words and give his sword to Harry, and you get that stuff. But that's sort of that's the emotional frustration beginning of the episode to carry through. and the catalyst around Harry getting a hold of Marcone to help track them down, and you have the whole like helicopter and the train and all of that stuff. And I think that that's them trying to get Nicodemus and get the shroud that he took from Harry. And this is where you have to start taking a few liberties. I think after that fight and that encounter, instead of them getting away and getting the shroud as they do in the books, I think that Nicodemus is able to not only hang on to the shroud, but he also takes Marcone. And that's how you end up with Marcone kidnapped by Nicodemus so that you can jump into the events that take place in the book of Small Favor. And you've got Harry and Michael and friends and all of that trying to track the Denarians to because they're still after the shroud, and by extension trying to get Marcone back because he was just helping them. And they track them to whatever that was. Was it a zoo or an aquarium, with the big tank of whatever manatees, or I don't even remember the exact setting that they're in. But you get to pretty much have that the way that it was and the way that it went down. And maybe they are able to actually get the shroud back, but Ivy is taken in that chaos and in that exchange. And I think to this point, you would have met Ivy in season 1 with the Duke Ortega duel. I think that you've probably spent some time in this early in this season, at least, if not actually showing her on screen, explaining her a little bit. I think you take opportunities in the dialogue to explain what the archive is and that it's a small child, or maybe you even leave the small child part. Well, like I said, you would have met her in season 1, but you do you lay some groundwork for people to be a little more invested in Ivy, and like, why do we care that she was taken, other than the fact that she's going to look like a 10-year-old girl at this point in time? And you should care. People are going to be able to connect to that even if they don't know this child very well. So I think that's how you get to the next episode, where they're tracking them down to Demon Reach. And this is where you can set up the importance of Demon Reach and Harry's connection to the place, and all of that. You have Harry able to save Marcone, save Ivy, get them out of there. But as happens in the book, Michael gets shot getting out. And you give people that like emotional blow at the very end of the episode, and you realize at the same time that Michael has been shot and we don't know if he survived, and Harry has been left behind on the island alone trying to survive and get away from these Denarians. And that's what you have for episode 6, is Harry trying to escape Demon Reach. He's able to do that in the books with like you have like the scene with the Gruff and that kind of and that stuff. I think we forego the Gruff because we haven't talked about the Fae yet. And I think you just have him, fighting his way off of the island. He's still able to almost kill Nicodemus, but he's essentially just overtaken by, all the Denarians, and he just has to get out of there. And you can have Murph wield the sword that Harry got from Shiro. But instead of them successfully getting away like they do in the books, I think you actually have them getting captured. And the reason that you do that is because the next major book that the Denarians plotline takes place in is Skin Game. And we don't have Mab in this story to force Harry into working with Nicodemus, and we certainly don't have the time jump from Small Favor to Skin Game for things to kind of like cool off a little bit, as much as it can or whatever, but like to figure out that Michael's going to be okay. He's hurt, and needs to recover, but things are going to like things have other things have taken priority for a while in the Dresden book series. For this TV season, that won't be the case. It has to keep going, right, and building upon itself. And so I think that you have a really cool way here to force Harry and Murph into working with Nicodemus for the skin game plot that doesn't include Mab. And I think it's having them get captured trying to get out of Demon Reach. So now you've got in episode 7, it's Harry and Murph forced into working with Nicodemus. They're captives, and you get them, going through the plan and attacking the vault, the bank vault. And maybe you end this episode as they break through and get into the Never Never. And we're looking at like the opening of the like security on Hades' vault on the other side. And so that is where you focus your energy of episode 8. You have the group penetrating Hades' vault. So you've got the fire security, you've got checking again, the ice security, and you've got like the life security, I believe it was, where Nicodemus sacrificed his own daughter to be able to get through that. You get them in the treasures of Hades. And I think that you can still have like a small conversation between Hades and Harry. I don't know that you absolutely have to have it, but you could have it. But you probably just don't. It doesn't have to go as long, and you probably don't transport them to like the sitting room by the fire or whatever. I think you probably just, maybe Hades does that like time freeze thing and maybe just like talks to him there in the vault for a few, for like whatever, 30 seconds or whatever, and then you're back into it. And this episode ends with the like battle with those Denarians in Hades' vault and everybody trying to get out, but Nicodemus gets away and locks Harry and Michael, or I guess in this case it would be Harry and Murph in the vault on the on the bank side of things. So the same way that Murph has replaced Susan in this season, she's also replaced Michael in this portion, as we sort of like slightly reorder things. And so they get out, they go for, they're trying to track down Nicodemus, and they have their fight out in front of Michael's house. Murphy gets hurt. Nicodemus breaks the sword, and they like retreat into the carpenter's home. And that is how you end the 9th episode of this season, so that your season finale is the Denarians and Nicodemus, their attack on the carpenter home. And you can have that pretty much follow the way that it went in the books as much as you want. Maybe you have Michael miraculously able to fight on Harry's behalf, but instead of the break between Murphy getting hurt and the attack on the vault, I think you just kind of like streamline that, have Murphy go with Harry, into the vault, and then have her broken and them retreat in. So that final episode is the attack on the house. It all still pretty much follows the book, quite well, but is streamlined a bit for TV. And you can end it with like, Butters, with the lightsaber version of the sword driving Nicodemus away. And that's your like defeat of Nicodemus, because obviously in the book series, Nicodemus is not dead. There could be more. With this TV series, who says that you can only have 6 seasons? Maybe this is supernatural. They'll do, 100 seasons of this thing, and the Denarians come back into play after we actually learn how that ends. But otherwise, you still have a pretty satisfying end to a TV season. You could have basically, everyone around him crumbled and have him defeated and like drove away. And then maybe in like, maybe it's a post-credit scene or just like a calm after the storm, essentially. You end this season with Harry and Butters visiting Murphy in the hospital, and Butters basically like showing them the lightsaber again and saying like, yes, I'm going to take this responsibility. I'm going to become a Knight of the Cross. So you have this like, we lost Michael as a knight, but we gained Butters as a knight, as like the the ultimate wrap up of season 2. And that's what I think. I think that's how season 2 goes for this fun adaptation of the Dresden Files series. In the next installment of this series, you're going to find out what my thoughts are on season 3 for this adaptation. In the meantime, if you're watching on YouTube, please comment below. What would you be most excited to see in the Denarian's story arc be put to TV screen? And make sure that you subscribe to the channel as well. If you're listening on a podcast app, leave a 5-star review, please. And remember, life is short. Drive that trusty Blue Beetle, curl up in your basement with a good book, and fuego the whole damn building if anybody has a problem with it. Just make sure that Bob makes it out safe, and you can call up your local Svartalv, and they can keep your electronics working just enough that you can catch the next episode of Belated Binge.